And the second round of indirect nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran wraps up today in Geneva, Switzerland. Following the meeting, Iran's foreign minister says Tehran and Washington have reached an understanding on key principles. He says there have been positive developments compared to the previous round, adding that both sides will now work on draft documents and exchange them. But he cautions that progress does not mean an agreement will be reached soon, saying no specific date is set for a third round of talks with the U.S. And the second round of talks was mediated by Oman. President Trump saying last night he'll be involved indirectly, adding he believes Iran wants to make a deal. Washington sought to expand the scope of talks to non-nuclear issues such as Iran's missile stockpile. But Tehran said it will only discuss curbs on its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Meanwhile, as the talks began today, Iran said it will close the Strait of Hormuz for several hours as it holds live-fire military exercises. The strait is a crucial international waterway through which 20% of the world's oil passes. This is the first time the regime has closed parts of the strait since the U.S. began ramping up military action in the region. And joining us to discuss the latest on Iran and the outcome and hopes of the Geneva talks is Jacob Olidort, director at the America First Policy Institute's Center for American Security. Great to have you with us today, Jacob. Let's start with President Trump there saying Iran wants to make a deal. How convinced are you of that?
It's great to be with you. Certainly, Iran wants to also determine the terms of the deal as well and prolong these talks, and obviously thinks that it can saber rattle to get things on its terms. But the fact is, the administration is exactly right here. Look, Iran is a global issue with U.S. equities around the world. And as you alluded to as well, it's not just the nuclear file, but it's also the ballistic missile program. It's Iran's support for terrorism around the world. These are all issues that we need Iran's commitments on. And of course, the United States is ready with its military assets in the region. So we'll see how this progresses. But certainly, Iran has its own incentives to carry the talks in the way that it wants to.
So what would a win look like for the U.S. here in these talks?
Well, I go back to Secretary of State Marco Rubio's description of the scope of the talks. It was basically the holistic terrorism, a range of issues, but certainly those at a minimum. I think Iran is pivotal as well, obviously, to the threats in our hemisphere vis-a-vis Venezuela and other adversarial regimes in Latin America. It's also pivotal to Putin's war effort in Ukraine, where Iran is providing ballistic missiles and drones and is interested, of course, in that sustaining. And so I think there's a lot of potential, in fact, in getting Iran's compliance on these range of issues. What that will mean in terms of its survival and next steps there will be interesting to watch.
Yes.
But I think certainly a comprehensive agreement in those ways has been missing to date.
And part of this puzzle is Iran wants the U.S. to ease international sanctions on it. What leverage, if any, does the regime have right now to affect such a thing?
Well, the fact is not very much. And of course, we've seen the Obama playbook of lifting sanctions and those types of appeasement strategies. Those I don't think are what the administration is looking at, to my mind. But I think that, look, Iran also has now Russia, it has China buying its oil. And in fact, there are other breakthroughs we're looking at in the region, looking at our partners, trying to push them off of Iranian and Russian oil. I think those will add the pressure to the Iranian regimes and make them come to the table to agree to a deal on the U.S.'s terms, which I think is part of the objective here.
Yes, President Trump trying to make separate deals with India. You mentioned Russia there. And of course, China is Iran's biggest oil buyer. So if China is cut off from Iran's oil effectively, how could that potentially impact the Iranian regime?
Well, I think that's a significant economic lifeline that the regime would lose. I think there's another piece as well. There's a Russia-Iran economic arrangement agreed to last year that would have Russia providing gas to Iran as a way of offsetting the losses Russia suffered due to the Nord Stream 1 pipeline explosion a few years ago. I think that would be another piece of this too. And so all of this is interconnected. And so it's not only cutting off the economic lifelines to Iran, but also ensuring that as the pressure is placed on Iran, that our other adversaries feel that pressure as well.
Now, just looking a little deeper into the regime itself, Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently said it's hard to negotiate with Iran because the regime makes its decisions based on religion rather than geopolitics. If that's true, what kind of principles or narratives might be informing the cleric's moves?
Well, I think that's exactly right. It's not only religion; it's ideologically motivated. But obviously, this administration is not afraid of embracing and pursuing even the hardest of deals. If those deals, of course, don't work, there are other options and levers we have at our disposal. But the reality is that Iran has been waging the longest forever war on the American people in half a century, and so the stakes and the importance of the American people could not be in some kind of an outcome being reached, whether diplomatically or militarily. The regime, for its part, has an interest in what it calls exporting the revolution. So on the one hand, it's survival at the top of the government's governance. But in another sense, and perhaps even more urgent, is ensuring that its terror network, all the way from Latin America to parts of Eastern Europe and beyond, survives whatever this occasion presents. And so I think Iran is obviously using diplomacy for its part, as it has done in the past, to try and extend its own lifeline and extend and build up its own leverage, however it sees fit. But obviously, I think the administration has seen this before. It's seen this last summer as well. And so I think it's navigating carefully, too.
And the regime itself is at an interesting inflection point. The President Trump has said recently a change in the regime could be the best outcome for the Iranian people. And indeed, it looks more and more likely. The nation beset with unrest, corruption, a faltering economy. How close is that hypothetical future in your view?
It's the closest it's ever been. Whether and how that'll manifest, time will tell. But the reality is that this regime and its proxy networks have suffered under the military pressure that Israel and the United States have placed under it, especially last summer, Operation Midnight Hammer. And that includes, during that 12-day war, Iran has lost members of its military leadership and research scientific community that supports its nuclear program. And so Iran is facing desperate measures. It's even called on its militias in this recent round to support it, which I think is another sign of desperation.
And what will you be watching for next as key indicators of progress in these talks?
Well, I want to see exactly what happens now in Iran. I want to watch as well the regime's activities towards the demonstrators. That remains a threshold the president has set. And I'll want to watch as well how the continuing rounds of talks go, what outcomes they produce, and obviously what that looks like.
Certainly. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights and perspectives. Jacob Olidort, good to speak with you.
Thank you for having me.